Hey guys, tonight we sail off into a world of moldy biscuits, questionable meats, and shipboard delicacies that might just leave you thankful for your leftovers. We're diving, fork first, into the gritty, chewy, and sometimes squirming world of what 16th century pirates actually ate at sea. Picture it, the creak of timber under your feet, the slap of cold waves against the hull, and a briny wind that tastes like regret. You're standing on the deck of a pirate ship somewhere in the Spanish Main, and you're starving. You haven't seen land in 3 weeks, and the galley's about to serve your first real meal in days. You shuffle into the mess with the crew, sunburned, tired, and ready to eat just about anything. But before we fill your bowl, one quick reality check. You probably won't survive this voyage. Between the bugs, the boredom, and the bread that bites back, pirate dining is more punishment than pleasure. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down into the dim, foul-smelling hold of the ship, and there it is, the mighty hardtack. It's not so much a bread as it is a dried, rock-hard slab that might have once been dough centuries ago. You tap it against the wooden table, and it makes a knock louder than your last attempt at mutiny. This is your breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner, and it doesn't even pretend to be edible. Hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, was the dry, flour and water solution to feeding sailors on long voyages. No yeast, no salt, no fun. It could last for months, sometimes years, without spoiling, which is exactly what made it so suspect. The moment these bricks left the bakery, they were already on their way to becoming insect hotels. Weevils loved them. You, not so much. You pick one up and examine the telltale pinholes across its surface. Tiny bugs have made a home here, and chances are they're still inside. You knock the biscuit on the edge of your bowl, and a couple of the freeloaders drop out. You flick them away and shrug. Extra protein, right? Now, here's where things get creative. Some pirates soaked their hardtack in water, rum, or even stew, just to make it chewable. Others preferred to break it into crumbs and mix it with anything. Salt pork, dried peas, or pipe ashes if desperation struck. But don't get excited. Even soaked, it tastes like soggy drywall. Historians still argue whether the weevils were intentionally left in for nutritional value, or if they were simply too difficult to get rid of. Some sources suggest that sailors developed a kind of immunity to the idea of bugs entirely. You, however, still gag a little. Don't worry, it passes. Or it doesn't. You're learning fast. Your fellow crewman beside you, a one-eyed brute who insists on being called Parrot Dave, despite owning no parrot, snaps his biscuit in half with the hilt of his cutlass. Soft today, he grunts approvingly. You glance down at yours, which has chipped a bit of the wooden table. Maybe you're just not using enough force. Let's pause for a moment to appreciate the science, or lack thereof, behind this food. Hardtack wasn't baked once, but twice or even 3 times, until all moisture was gone. That's not cooking, that's manufacturing. There's a reason you're more likely to break a tooth than get full. Ship dentists, if there were any, mostly dealt with cracked molars from gnawing on these things. Dental insurance? No such luck. And if you think pirates were the only ones cursed with hardtack, think again. Naval fleets, merchant ships, explorers. They all ate the same concrete cuisine. The difference? Pirates didn't always follow ration protocols, which means once you ran out, there wasn't a kindly quartermaster handing out refills. One pirate chronicler, though some say he was just a dramatic cook's assistant, once claimed he saw a man cry after eating his last biscuit. Not because he was hungry, but because the biscuit had already been eaten. By rats. You feel a pang of sympathy and tuck your remaining half safely into your pouch. For later. Or maybe as a weapon. In some cases, pirates tried to cook with hardtack, crumbling it into boiling water with a pinch of whatever spices or scraps they could find. The result? A gritty mush that clung to the roof of your mouth like betrayal. Still, it beat chewing it raw. Now, here's a little fringe tidbit. Sailors sometimes gave hardtack nicknames. Tooth dullers, sea crackers, and my personal favorite, worm castles. You don't want to know how it earned that last one. But since you're here, I'll tell you anyway. If the biscuit had been stored too close to heat, the weevils inside would hatch prematurely, and sometimes crawl out onto your plate mid-meal. Bon appétit. You glance around the hold again, wondering if anyone else is dealing with the same weevil situation. Turns out, no one cares. The rest of the crew is gnawing away in grim silence, breaking the hardtack like it's just another fact of life. Like rope burns or barnacles. One man casually flips a biscuit like a coin, and it lands with a thunk that shakes your bowl. Pirate fine dining, right? By the end of your first week at sea, your jaw has developed muscles you didn't know existed. Your gums are sore, your morale is low, and your dreams have started to feature soft, fresh bread loaves that vanish when you bite into them. One sailor claims he saw a biscuit shatter into 3 identical pieces, and took that as a sign from Neptune. Superstition runs deep when your food is this bad, but hardtack isn't going away. It's the cornerstone of the pirate diet, and by now, you've accepted your fate. You chew slowly, stare at the horizon, and wonder what other culinary nightmares await you in the days ahead. Spoiler, it only gets worse. It begins with a crunch. Not the satisfying kind. No golden crust, no warm steam rising from a flaky loaf. This is the crunch of regret, of choices made, of desperation baked solid. You wince. You've just bitten into your first ship's biscuit, also known without irony as hardtack. You try not to let your eyes water as your teeth grind against something that feels more geological than culinary. You blink. You stare. You take another bite, this time slower, more cautiously, as if you're sampling ancient ruins. The texture is horrifying. The taste, an insult to the very idea of food. Dry doesn't even begin to describe it. This thing is prehistoric. It was baked until every drop of moisture left it, then baked again for good measure. Your molars feel betrayed. Your gums personally offended. You've been told to expect this. Your crewmate, with a grin half missing his teeth, laughs as you struggle. You'll get used to it, he says, dunking his own biscuit into a tin mug of what barely passes as tea. Either that or you won't. Either way, you'll still eat. And he's right, because hunger doesn't care. Let's break down your breakfast. First up, the biscuit, made of flour and water, just those 2 things, mixed into a paste, rolled flat, cut into squares, and baked until they're harder than cannonballs. No yeast, no fat, no flavor. It's not bread, it's survival, and it lasts forever. Seriously. There are still some in museums. They're not kidding when they call it toothbreaker. You watch as another sailor takes his biscuit and bashes it against a post before chewing. softens it, he mumbles. You're not sure that's true, but it does make a noise like someone knocking on a coffin. The real horror, though, is what's inside. Not the ingredients, the inhabitants, weevils, tiny, pale worms that infest the biscuit's heart. You're told that every biscuit has them. Always. You just don't always see them. Adds protein, someone says, unhelpfully. There are tricks to cope. You can tap the biscuit on a hard surface, shake out the squirmers before biting, or hold it up to the sun. See if it moves. Some just shrug and eat them anyway. We all got worms, a cook once muttered. What's one more? Still, the idea of chewing something that's chewing you back is hard to stomach. And speaking of stomachs, next up on your plate is salt meat. It comes out of a barrel, half floating in a slick pool of brine so thick you could skate across it. The meat itself is a miracle of preservation and a crime against the senses. It's gray, maybe pinkish gray. Could be beef, could be pork, could be something unholy from the deep. You watch the cook fish it out. He doesn't flinch. Years of calluses, inside and out. He slaps it on a board and chops it into hunks. No trimming, no tenderness, just brute force. The cleaver slices through gristle and sinew and probably history. Then it goes into a pot. No oil, no onions, just water and meat. It boils and boils and boils. Salt fills the air. It gets in your nose, in your pores, in your soul. And then, it's ready. You get a ladleful. The meat is chewy, fibrous, absurdly salty. It clings to your molars like guilt. You chew, you swallow. You wonder how much longer you can pretend this is food, but it fills you. That's all that matters. Rations are tight, strict. There's no buffet here. You're given a portion. Measured, counted, controlled. Try to steal more, and you'll answer to the quartermaster. Or worse, the cook. He keeps count. He remembers faces. One guy tried to sneak a second biscuit once. Got assigned to bilge duty for a week. Came out looking like a ghost that got pickled. Now, not every day is biscuit and meat. Sometimes there's fish, if someone hauls it in. Fresh fish is a treasure. The crew cheers. It means something different, something soft and flaky and briefly alive. Sometimes the fish is pickled, or dried, or spiced. If you're very lucky, there's dried fruit, a sliver of fig, a raisin, a curl of something that was once an apple. These aren't meals, they're events. The kind of day you remember 6 months later when you're gnawing biscuit number 400. Historians still argue whether pirates truly ate better than Navy sailors. Some say yes, pirates could steal what they liked. Others say no. Pirates were stuck with what they could carry and preserve. One raid might score you barrels of rum and beef, but the next might leave you chewing your own shoes. You've tasted both ends of that spectrum. Then there's cheese. Yes, sometimes cheese. It comes in wheels, wrapped in wax or cloth, often moldy, always sharp. It travels well for a while. Then it turns, and when it turns, it really turns. But before it does, you savor every crumb. You cut it like gold. You sniff it like perfume. Even the smell of decay becomes a luxury compared to the endless salt of meat and the sand of biscuit. And there's pea soup, a mash made from dried peas and water. Occasionally thick, occasionally watery, never actually green. Sometimes the cook adds spices or onion. Rarely. Usually it's just hot and bland, but it's warm, and that counts for something. Then, of course, there's the vinegar. Yes, straight vinegar. You're given a cup. It's thin, sour, and slightly cloudy. Some captains claim it prevents scurvy. Others just like the way it burns on the way down. You've learned to take it in one gulp and move on. It wakes you up. Sometimes it makes your stomach rebel. You don't ask for seconds. But vinegar is medicine, not indulgence. And that brings us to rum. The one indulgence that isn't food at all. Rum is the salve, the comfort, the bribe, the punishment. You get a ration, maybe a half-gill, maybe more on good days. It warms your belly, dulls the edge of hunger, makes the biscuit go down easier. Too much, though, and you stagger, you slur, you fight. The captain watches carefully. Drunkenness is tolerated, sloppiness is not. Some men trade their rations, biscuit for rum, meat for rum, their shoes if it comes to that. Hunger makes men strange. So does the sea. At night, lying in your hammock or curled on a sack of rope, your stomach a strange mix of full and furious. You dream about things you can't name anymore. Hot stew, butter, cinnamon, bread with a crust. You wake up chewing nothing, and you do it all again. Over time, you stop tasting it. The biscuit becomes just a texture, the meat a function. You eat to fuel the hours, to hoist sails, to scrub decks, to carry powder, to survive. And still you find ways to joke. You nickname the worst biscuit the brick. You cheer when someone cracks a tooth. You make a sport of guessing the bug count. You pretend the pork is dragon meat. You invent sauces from seawater and imagination. Because without humor, you wouldn't last a week. And even with it, some don't. The sun has barely cracked the horizon, but you're already back in line. If you can call this sluggish clump of yawning, barefoot pirates a line. Your stomach growls low and mean. Last night's pork still feels like a brick lodged in your gut, but breakfast is breakfast. And today, the cook promises something different. You peek into the steaming pot at the front of the queue. You were lied to. Floating in a thin, grayish broth are a few familiar shapes. Mushy peas, a sliver of pork fat, possibly reused from yesterday, and what might be a carrot, though at this point it could just as easily be a painted rock. The cook gives it a lazy stir. A film of scum rides the surface like a ghostly oil slick. Soup, he says proudly, ladling it into your bowl with a slosh. Soup, stew, porridge. It all blurs together on a pirate ship. At sea, these terms don't mean much. Anything vaguely wet and warm qualifies. But this particular concoction, this is more dishwater with ambition. You cradle the bowl carefully, hoping it smells better than it looks. It doesn't. Still, you've learned by now not to sniff too hard. The broth might be bland, but it's food. You raise a spoon and blow on it gently. Pirate manners. The first sip tastes like water. Second sip, more water, this time with a whisper of salt. You chase the bottom of the bowl with your spoon, scraping up a lone bean and something that might have once been garlic. It adds nothing. You eat anyway. You overhear one of the crew muttering that the soup is made from the ghost of a pig and the memory of flavor. He's not wrong. There's a kind of culinary nihilism aboard pirate ships, a deep acceptance that meals are for survival, not joy. Now and then you'll get something thicker, a stew that clings to your spoon and tastes like it was cooked in someone's boot. This hearty version is usually the result of hardtack crumbled into broth, swelling like a sad sponge until the cook stirs it into submission. It gives the illusion of body, but not substance. Sometimes bits of dried cabbage or stringy leeks show up, their taste long since boiled out and replaced by brine. Interestingly, some ships had a slush fund, a real one. It wasn't just gold hoarded in a captain's chest. This version was literal, the greasy leftovers skimmed from boiled pork or beef. Cooks would collect the fat, called slush, and sell it when they reached port, often to candle makers or tallow vendors. the money became a kind of petty cash for the crew. That same slush, though, sometimes made its way into your soup as flavoring. You learned quickly that flavor on a pirate ship is just another word for recycled grease. One scholar once called this practice efficient. Another called it culinary war crimes. Historians still debate whether pirate stews improved morale or worsened health. The answer may lie somewhere in the bowl you're currently staring at. It's warm, filling, and deeply, profoundly joyless. Still, the galley has its moments. Occasionally, someone sneaks in something odd. A dried apple core, a pinch of old nutmeg, even a candied orange peel from a stolen merchant crate. These little additions don't change the dish much, but they change the experience. One night, the cook found a handful of cloves. No one knows how. That stew had aroma. The crew sat silently that night, inhaling it like a holy incense. But don't get too cozy. Even the best soup days can be undone by the spoon itself. On many ships, utensils were shared, or crafted crudely from scrap wood and leftover nails. One unlucky spoon had a splinter the size of a matchstick. Another had bite marks from someone who may or may not have been trying to escape. You've taken to carving your initials in yours, mostly to discourage theft, though you're not sure anyone would want it. As you sit on an upturned crate, sipping your soup and pretending not to notice the lump of something unidentifiable settling at the bottom of your bowl, a rat scurries across the far beam. No one reacts. The rat isn't there for drama. He's just another diner. Occasionally, he eats better than you. Some pirates actually cooked the rats, but we'll get to that later. Now, here's a lesser-known fact. Some 16th-century pirates tried to supplement soup with seaweed. Especially in warmer waters, clever sailors would lower nets over the side, gathering floating vegetation and tiny shrimp-like creatures tangled in the kelp. The result, when boiled with broth, created a kind of proto-seafood stew. One ship log from a French corsair described it as green and slippery, but better than chewing nothing. You wonder if your ship would ever try that. You glance at the cook. He's picking his teeth with a fish bone. Maybe not. Still, not all soups were failures. When port was in reach, or after a successful raid, supplies could be restocked. Onions, real beans, maybe even a slab of fresh meat. That night, soup becomes a feast. Even if only for one night, even if half the crew ends up fighting over the last spoonful. A good soup can silence grumbling. A great one can delay mutiny. Speaking of mutiny, food has often been a catalyst for it. When the galley served pink broth, a stew so overcooked the pork turned rosy and weirdly translucent, 3 crewmen threw their bowls overboard and demanded better rations. They got rope lashes instead. But the cook started stirring his pot a little longer after that. You finish the last of your bowl. The bean at the bottom has disintegrated. A film clings to the inside like soap scum. You rinse it in your rationed water, watching tiny bits of pork fat swirl and vanish. The meal might not stick with you long, but the memory will. Still, you can't complain too loudly. There's a certain warmth in having anything hot in your hands after a damp, shivering night on deck. Soup may be thin, it may be questionable, it may be offensively beige, but it fills the space where hunger once lived. You wipe your spoon on your sleeve, pocket it, and head back above deck. The wind hits your face like a cold slap, but your belly's no longer hollow. You're fed, you're standing, and you're still on the right side of the waves. That's enough for today. Just don't ask what's for dinner. You've eaten the hardtack. You've swallowed the pork. You've survived the soup. and yet the grumbling in your belly hasn't ceased. It's a quieter hunger now, one that sneaks up behind you and wraps its arms around your ribs like a constricting rope. By day 12 at sea, you're learning something awful and deeply humbling. It's not the meals that'll kill you. It's the gaps between them. And when there's nothing left in the barrel, no biscuit in sight, and the stew has been replaced with cloudy water and whispered memories, that's when the real creativity begins. You hear the scratching before you see it. Somewhere near the food stores, down in the lower hold, a soft rustling, like fingernails on damp parchment. You creep closer, so does someone else. A crewmate you know only as Smee is crouched by a stack of crates, his eyes fixed on a twitching burlap sack. Inside, a rat, fat and glossy, with the smug face of a creature who's been living the high life off your biscuit crumbs and sleeping warmer than you for weeks. Smee moves fast. The sack slams down. The rat squeals once, then silence, and then he grins at you. You don't speak. You just nod. Because tonight, whether you like it or not, rat is what's for dinner. It's not just a salty sea tale. Rats were a very real part of life aboard 16th-century ships, and in desperate times, they became a very real part of the menu. They infested the food stores, gnawed through ropes, nested in sailcloth, and multiplied with terrifying ease. While most of the crew considered them pests, some saw opportunity. Meat is meat, especially when you haven't had a warm meal in days and your stomach feels like it's eating itself. A small fire is lit in a covered bucket near the rear of the galley, away from the cook's line of sight. This isn't an official meal. This is off-the-books dining. Pirate cuisine in its most desperate form. Smee pulls a second rat from the sack, smaller, leaner, still wriggling, and begins skinning it with a knife that looks far too clean for someone who doesn't make this a habit. You start to wonder how many times he's done this exact dance. The smell that rises from the sizzling meat is not the worst thing you've inhaled on this ship. A little gamey, a little greasy, and, disturbingly, kind of familiar. The flesh darkens quickly, curling at the edges like crisping bacon. One of the lads sprinkles something greenish over it, dried herbs from a pocket stash. Thyme, maybe, or moss. No one's entirely sure anymore. You get a piece. You hesitate. It tastes like overcooked squirrel, or what you imagine overcooked squirrel might taste like. Chewy, slightly burnt, and clinging to the memory of fire. You chew slowly. You don't stop. You finish. By now, you've realized the rules of eating aboard a pirate ship are simple. Eat what you can, when you can, however you can. You learn not to question too much. The rat may not be gourmet, but it's real meat, and in that moment, that's enough. Fringe records from Portuguese voyages describe rats, especially black rats, as a last resort protein. Some officers even turned a blind eye when the lower decks began harvesting them in earnest. It was a grim sort of balance, vermin control via appetite. A few ships went so far as to organize games. Who could catch the biggest rat or the most in a night? The prize? First pick of the cooked ones, naturally. You glance across the deck. A few younger crewmen are watching with wide eyes, half horrified, half envious. Hunger is a universal translator. One of them shifts, clearly considering whether to join you or judge you. Better than the pork, you mutter aloud. He joins you. But rats weren't the only animals to accidentally wander onto a pirate's plate. Birds, especially seabirds, were fair game. One time, a seagull flew too low and was smacked out of the sky with a mop. Dinner. Another time, a sailor named Cribbs lured a pelican aboard with crumbled biscuit and promptly broke its neck. They roasted it on a spit made from broken mastwood and soaked the ropes in rum for fuel. It tasted awful, but it was different, and sometimes different is enough. Turtles were another surprisingly regular item, especially in Caribbean waters. Massive, green-shelled creatures with docile eyes that made you feel guilty for even thinking about boiling them. But guilt doesn't weigh much when your stomach's screaming. If your ship was lucky enough to catch one, it could feed the crew for days. The meat was fatty, the organs were nutrient-rich, and the blood. Some claimed it had medicinal qualities. Others just liked the color. One particularly well-documented raid on the Cayman Islands in the mid-1500s included the seizure of 30 sea turtles from a beach near a Spanish outpost. The pirates feasted like kings, roasted the meat over driftwood fires, and turned the leftover shells into soup bowls, signal mirrors, and, because why not, a helmet for the quartermaster. He wore it proudly for a week before it cracked in the rain. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about the wild menu. Some pirates, especially those from the upper echelons of Europe, turned up their noses at the very idea of eating rat or turtle. But hunger speaks louder than class. Sooner or later, nearly everyone caves. Now, the fringe of pirate dining gets even weirder. One log from a Dutch privateer notes that, in times of extreme desperation, the men boiled barnacles scraped off the hull. The resulting stew was described as slimy, bitter, and alarmingly alive. Another tale tells of a ship that ran so low on supplies that its crew boiled strips of sailcloth that had soaked up meat grease over months. They chewed the salty canvas until their jaws ached. "Didn't fill the belly," one survivor wrote, but it gave the illusion of trying. You even hear whispers of a particularly rough crew who tried eating leather. They stripped belts, boots, and the lining of their hats, boiling them until the fibers gave way. It didn't work. One man nearly choked on a buckle. Historians still argue whether this so-called rat cuisine was ever truly accepted or just tolerated. Some believe pirate ships had unofficial rat catchers. Lads paid in rum or extra rations to keep the population down by tooth and flame. Others think it was spontaneous, desperate, and too shameful to ever make it into official logs. But every now and then, a ship journal includes a line like, "A fair supper of vermin tonight." You draw your own conclusions. Back at the fire, your piece of meat is gone. Smee is scraping the bottom of the pan with a flat piece of wood, trying to salvage anything crisp. He offers you the last scrap, a tiny, curled ear, blackened to the size of a coin. You politely decline. Tonight, this secret supper might be the only thing in your belly. The official galley has nothing left but a pot of cloudy broth and a handful of dry lentils. No salt, no meat, not even a carrot stub. So you sit back, warm from the fire, and listen to the sea's slow slap against the hull. The rats scurry in the shadows, indifferent to your suffering. You wonder how many of their brothers you've eaten by now. You look up. One is perched on a beam above you, watching. You meet its beady little eyes. It blinks. You nod. Tomorrow, maybe, your back cracks as you rise, stiff from another night curled under damp canvas. The sea, for once, is calm, a pale blue sheet glinting with morning light. You stretch, yawn, and shuffle across the deck. But it isn't hunger that pushes you awake this time. It's thirst. Salt-crusted lips, a tongue thick as old rope, a throat that burns each time you breathe. You're dry. Deeply, hopelessly dry. and that's a dangerous thing at sea. You look around. Other pirates are stirring, faces drawn, voices cracked. No one speaks of it, but everyone feels it. The water barrels are getting low. Fresh water has always been the cruelest joke of sea life, surrounded by endless ocean, and yet not a drop to drink. You can't gulp seawater. It'll dehydrate you faster than fire. So every sip of stored fresh water becomes a ceremony, a blessing, a whispered prayer in your throat. And when the barrels run low, you learn the ancient art of rationing. Painful, maddening, teeth-aching rationing. You shuffle to the quartermaster's station. There's a bucket with a ladle, today's allowance. You dip your cup, just a mouthful. You close your eyes and let it sit on your tongue. Warm, slightly metallic, but heavenly all the same. You don't gulp, you sip, slowly, carefully, as if drinking too fast will anger whatever spirit still watches over this cracked, sun-bleached ship. That's it for the day. One cup, no seconds. Don't even ask. Pirates tried all kinds of tricks to preserve water, sealing barrels with wax, stuffing herbs inside to kill the taste, placing them deep in the hold where it stayed cool. But even the best-kept water went bad fast. Within weeks, it turned green, then brown. Then it started to smell like dead fish and vinegar. You'd still drink it. You had to. One captain reportedly forced his men to strain it through a cloth. It worked, sort of. The cloth got moldy. So did the men. There are mentions of some ships using linen bags to distill seawater by hanging them near cooking fires. The heat would draw fresh vapor, dripping into small pots. It worked, if you had hours, patience, and a crew that didn't stab each other over half a spoonful. Most pirates just hoped for rain. Rain was a miracle. At the first sign of clouds, the crew would scatter across the deck, opening barrels, stretching out shirts, catching drips in open mouths. You did it last week. Laid flat, arms out, tongue poked to the sky, letting each cold drop hit your sun-scorched face like a kiss. That rain saved lives. But it didn't last. So when the water goes, the pirates improvise. You notice someone pouring something thick and dark into a cracked mug. Room. Again. It's always rum. You're not surprised. Now, here's where it gets dicey. Pirates drank alcohol like it was medicine, and in their minds, it was. Beer, wine, rum, grog, all of it safer than water, or at least more bearable. Even rotten water could be masked with a splash of booze. Grog was the usual fix, a mix of weak rum, stale water, sugar if available, and sometimes lime. Not for flavor. Lime helped prevent scurvy, the pirates' other favorite curse. You sip yours. It's foul. It tastes like mop water mixed with regret. But it works. The burn feels good. Of course, drinking to hydrate is like using sandpaper for lotion. You feel better for a while. Then the headaches start. Then the dizziness. Then you're too dry to even sweat. Historians still argue how pirates balanced their fluid intake. Some claim they rationed wisely, using strict logbooks and iron-fisted quartermasters. Others insist it was chaos. First come, first drink. Whoever was sober enough to fight got the ladle. You once saw a man wrestle his own bunkmate for a half-full flask. He won. Then he passed out before finishing it. The other guy drank it anyway. On some ships, coconut water was gold. Crack one open, and you had a few precious gulps of clean, sweet liquid. But coconuts didn't last, and they didn't float alongside the ship politely. They were rare finds, stolen from island raids or bought at coastal markets before setting sail. You think about coconuts a lot these days. Then there's the fruit trick. Some captains insisted on carrying barrels of dried citrus. Rehydrated with water, they made passable juice, and, more importantly, kept scurvy at bay. But most pirates weren't citrus fans. Limes meant planning. Planning meant authority. Pirates preferred chaos, so they drank what they had: rum, grog, whatever water didn't taste like toe fungus. There's a story you once heard, maybe true, maybe just deck gossip, about a ship that brewed sea tea using boiled salt water and old leaves. They thought it helped stretch rations. Half the crew went blind. The other half claimed it was the best sleep they ever had. You pass one of the younger deckhands huddled near a water barrel. His cup is empty. His lips are cracked. He's dipping a strip of cloth inside, then sucking the water out of it like candy. He catches your eye, doesn't blink. You nod. He nods back. Nothing needs to be said. This is normal now. Water politics are brutal. There's no fairness here, just seniority and luck. You learn to hide your mug. You learn to sip with your back turned. You learn not to drink loudly. But thirst changes people, makes them twitchy, makes them dream of waterfalls, of grapes, of cool wells in distant fields. You once woke up licking the side of the ship. You weren't alone. During one especially dry stretch, the captain offered a prize, a double water ration to whoever could make it 3 days without complaining. 7 men tried. 2 succeeded. One of them never really spoke again. You start hearing rumors that the cook might make broth tonight. Thin, sure, but hydrating. You dream of that broth. You imagine it with spices, with vegetables, with mercy. It probably won't happen, but you let yourself believe, because that's how pirate life works. One sip, one lie, one mouthful of hope at a time. You're chewing leather. Not in the metaphorical sense. Not some poetic metaphor for hardship. No, your back molars are grinding down on the fraying edge of your own bootstrap, half out of desperation, half out of boredom, and maybe just a bit out of stubbornness. It doesn't taste like much. Mostly salt and shoe polish, which ironically is more flavor than yesterday's stew. You pull the strap out of your mouth and sigh. A few of the other pirates chuckle, but not cruelly. They've done the same. The difference is, you haven't reached the stage of actually swallowing yet. Food boredom, it turns out, is its own kind of torment. And aboard a 16th-century pirate ship, where every meal is some variant of greasy slop in a bowl, you begin to crave not just food, but variety. Something, anything, that doesn't taste like sadness soaked in brine. At first, it was manageable. The hardtack, the pork, even the soupy mush, they were tolerable. But now, 3 weeks out to sea, the sameness is making you question reality. You bite into a biscuit, and you swear it stares back. You smell the stew pot, and wonder if the cook just keeps adding water and praying no one notices. It's like culinary Groundhog Day, but with more weevils. Ah yes, the weevils. Let's talk about those little intruders. You've come to accept that your hardtack is alive. Not metaphorically, actually alive. The small black beetles live inside the biscuits, and if you're lucky, they're already dead by the time you take your first bite. If not, they wriggle. You learn to tap the biscuit on the table to evict them. Some fall out, some cling on. You eat them anyway. It's protein. Some pirates even prefer the biscuit with bugs. It softens the texture. Adds crunch, one man said, like pepper. You learn not to question it. One thing that stands out, though, is how differently everyone handles the monotony. Some pirates get inventive. One guy, Briggs, starts fermenting old fruit rinds and onion scraps under his hammock, brewing what he calls brig juice. It smells like a foot stepped on a cabbage. He insists it's delicious. You pretend to believe him. Others turn to spice. Not the fancy kind. We're talking bootleg spice. Bits of pepper stolen from merchant ships, dried herbs hidden in socks, leftover mustard seeds scraped from barrels. A single clove becomes more valuable than gold. You've seen grown men argue over a pinch of dried rosemary. Not because it made the food taste better, it didn't, but because it suggested variety. It was psychological seasoning. Then there's the wild stuff. One man tried crushing barnacles into a paste and spreading it on biscuit. He called it sea butter. It made him sick for 3 days. Another found a moldy onion and made soup out of it. The smell was so strong it knocked out a rat. True story. Historians still argue whether pirate cooks were respected or reviled. Some accounts say they were valued as vital crew members. Others suggest they were one bad meal away from being tossed overboard. You're pretty sure your cook exists in both categories. He's got a scar across his cheek and a tattoo that looks like a ladle crossed with a skull. He's also missing 2 fingers, probably from chopping meat in a storm, or maybe because someone finally snapped after one too many bean soups. You approach the galley to see what's on the menu today. Spoiler, it's stew. Again, smells faintly of cabbage and regret. The pot is bubbling lazily, the same way it has for days. You scoop a bowlful and try not to gag. It's not just that it's bland, it's tired. You swear the stew is depressed. It doesn't even pretend to steam anymore. You sit next to Old Gully, a grizzled deckhand who's been sailing longer than you've been alive. He dips a piece of hardtack into the stew and says, "This is actually better than the stuff we had off Madagascar." You raise an eyebrow. That batch tasted like mop juice and tow. Comforting. But it does bring up a good point. Things could be worse. There are logs from 16th century voyages describing bread soup made entirely from soaked biscuit crumbs, flavored with seawater, and thickened with pork fat so old it had turned translucent. Another mentions cheese mash, a mix of crumbled cheese rinds, bean water, and boiled onions. A crew once cooked the same fish head for 5 meals in a row. They called it Captain Cod. Still, you're starting to go mad. Not from hunger, but from repetition. You find yourself fantasizing about texture. You dream of crisp things, of crunch and snap and bite. Everything here is mushy, soft, slippery, or gritty. Your teeth are bored. One day, someone finds a crate of almonds hidden beneath a cannonball stack, a forgotten snack from a merchant raid. The entire crew goes feral. The nuts are divided equally, 4 per man. You savor each one. Chew it 20 times. You even save the last almond skin in your pocket. It's a memento of a better day. And then there's fruit. Real fruit. It happens rarely. Maybe after a raid. Maybe when you're near port. Or maybe it's a miracle. But when fruit shows up, the ship feels different. Livelier. Almost human again. You once bit into an apple so juicy it made you tear up. Not because it tasted good, it did, but because it reminded you of life off the water. It reminded you of color, of choices. But fruit rots. Fast. And when it's gone, you're back to boiled sadness and spoonfuls of beige. Some pirates tried drying their fruit, preserving it in sugar or rum. It worked for a while, but sugar was rare. And rum, well, rum was more valuable as rum. You hear stories of a ship that tried pickling oranges. They turned to mush. Another one packed peaches in jars. The jars shattered during a storm. The smell haunted them for weeks. Even flavor itself becomes a ghost. You begin to smell spices that aren't there. Your tongue plays tricks. You swear the stew tastes like garlic today, but it doesn't. It's your imagination wearing its last clean outfit. Food monotony breaks people. Not suddenly, not loudly, it just wears them down. You catch one of the newer lads nibbling chalk from a carpenter's box. He says it tastes like lemon. You don't stop him. Who are you to crush hope? You once spent an hour licking a cinnamon stick someone found in the corner of a crate. It was dusty, possibly moldy. Still the best hour of your week. Historians believe this constant monotony contributed to the famed pirate tempers, food rage, stew delirium. Whatever you call it, it's real. Some captains tried rotating duties to give the cook a break. Others just hired a second cook to argue with the first. It didn't help much. The food still tasted like glue and dreams. So you do what you can. You mix biscuit crumbs with broth and pretend it's pudding. You float hardtack in grog and call it cereal. You close your eyes and imagine it's lasagna. You chew leather. You survive. Because on a pirate ship, the meals aren't about taste. They're about not dying. You're starting to understand something strange about life at sea. It isn't just the hunger anymore. It's the sameness. Every day blends into the next like overcooked stew. The sky changes, the wind shifts, but your food? It stays stubbornly beige. Salt pork, biscuit, something brown in a bowl. Repeat until madness. But today, something happens. You smell it first. It hits your nose mid-morning, right when the sun's climbing and your brain is crawling from sleep. Sweet, rich, spiced. It makes your stomach lurch like it's heard a bedtime story. You blink, rub your nose. Is that cinnamon? You're halfway across the deck before you even realize you've moved. You're not the only one. Half the crew is sniffing the air like starving hounds. The scent is drifting up from the galley, curling around ropes and barrels like a siren's song. It's warm, cozy, illegal almost. You'd kill someone for a cinnamon bun right now, and you haven't even seen what's cooking yet. At the galley hatch, the cook leans against a barrel, arms crossed, expression smug. He looks like he just won a war. Today, he mutters, we eat like emperors. You want to laugh, but you're too hungry. Word spreads fast. A crate, long forgotten, was unearthed beneath a stack of ballast stones, buried treasure in the most literal sense. Inside, dried figs, candied orange peels, a handful of sugar lumps, and a tightly wrapped oilskin pouch of spices. Clove, cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe even a little ginger. No one dares ask where it came from. Portuguese trader, Dutch merchant, who cares? It's not salted meat, and that's what matters. The cook, in a fit of divine madness, is making porridge. Yes, porridge. But not the watery, sour mush that passes for breakfast most days. This is a golden, thick, sticky miracle. Mashed white beans boiled with oat crumbs and thickened with powdered goat's milk, stirred with sugar and spiced like a king's banquet. The whole ship smells like dessert. When you get your bowl, your hands tremble. It's not much, just a ladleful, but it steams gently, flecked with something orange and glistening. You take a bite, and then you pause. It's sweet. You chew slowly, reverently. It coats your tongue like memory. The figs melt into the mash. The peel gives it zing, and the spice, oh, the spice, wraps your brain in warmth. It's almost too much. You chew again. Swallow. Someone behind you sobs. You understand. You eat every bite. You scrape the sides with your fingers. You're not proud. Around you, the crew is in a trance. No one is fighting. No one is yelling. someone actually starts humming a tune. This isn't just food, it's therapy. Pirate food rarely tasted this good. Most meals were about function, not flavor. But on rare, miraculous days like this, when the universe delivered a crate of joy, the crew transformed. Morale lifted. People smiled with their whole faces. The ship didn't seem so cursed. Even the captain looks different, like he remembers a childhood meal or a lover's kitchen. He doesn't speak, just sips from his own bowl and stares at the horizon. You hear the story later, how the cook once sailed with Portuguese sailors who made a dish called papas doces, a sweet porridge for feast days. This was his attempt at recreating it. Historians still argue whether pirates truly had feasting traditions, but logbooks sometimes mention spice nights or fig feasts after successful raids. Maybe it wasn't a ritual. Maybe it was just survival dressed up as a party. Whatever it is, today is special. You think of what you've been eating lately. Hardtack with weevils, stew so bland it tastes like punishment, grog so watery it might just be rain. And now you've had figs and sugar. You feel human again. Even your bunkmate, the one who once tried to eat a boiled belt strap, is smiling like he just saw a ghost. But as you know, all good things aboard a pirate ship come with an expiration date. By dusk, the crate is empty. The spices are gone. The sugar's been scraped to dust. One man licks the inside of the oilskin pouch like it's a popsicle. The cook throws it at his head. You know tomorrow will bring salt pork again. You know the stew will be gray and the biscuit will be hard enough to stop a bullet. But for now, for this brief blink in time, you had sweetness. Real, honest-to-goodness sweetness. And it changes something in you. You sit under the stars that night and relive the flavor in your head. You remember each fig piece, each sugar crystal. You try to hold on to the memory like it's gold. It might be the only sweet thing you taste for another month, or ever again. You listen to the waves slapping the hull and wonder how far spices travel. Across deserts, through jungles, loaded into ships, traded with lives. Wars have been fought over cinnamon. People died for cloves. And here you are, a dirty, sunburnt sailor, scraping sticky porridge from a wooden bowl, feeling like royalty. There's something funny about that. You overhear one of the older deckhands telling the younger lads about the rum cake incident of '84, where a galley cook used old grog-soaked raisins and biscuit crumbs to bake a dessert in a copper pot. They passed it around in hats. "Tasted like heaven," he says, eyes glazed. Or maybe I was drunk. Someone else mentions a story, might be true, might be lies, about a pirate queen who fed her crew saffron rice pudding made from stolen Dutch spice crates. She stirred it herself, he swears, cried while doing it. You realize something then. Pirates don't tell love stories. They tell food stories. Because when your life is blood and salt and storms, a sweet meal is the closest thing you get to grace. Historians debate whether pirate captains ever planned meals to boost morale. Some say they just handed food out by the barrel and hoped no one died. Others claim they saved treats, fruit, honey, dried meat, for days when tempers flared or storms passed. Victory stews show up in some logs, stews thickened with raided poultry, fresh veg, and sometimes even coconut milk from island stops. You don't care what historians think. You care about the memory of fig porridge warming your belly. You drift off to sleep thinking of nutmeg, dreaming of sugar. And when you wake tomorrow to the slap of biscuit on your plate, you'll sigh, but you'll also smile. Because now you know flavor is possible, even here, even for you. You're dreaming of pineapples when something cold smacks you in the face. You jolt awake, heart thudding, blanket tangled around your legs. The hammock sways wildly. It takes you a moment to realize what hit you. Rain. Cold, wet, glorious rain, coming down in fat, metallic-smelling drops from a sky that's finally broken open after days of muggy, cloud-thick heat. Around you, the ship is chaos. Not panic, excitement. Pirates are scrambling across the deck like children on a sugar rush, flipping buckets upright, pulling off shirts, tipping their heads back with open mouths. A man tries to catch raindrops in a frying pan. Another is wringing out his socks into a cup. You rush up the ladder barefoot and almost trip over the cook, who's holding 2 pots like he's been preparing for this moment his whole life. Rain means water. Fresh, drinkable, unsalted water. It's rare and precious and oddly intimate. Sky-gifted, as some of the older sailors say. You stretch your hands out and let it soak you. Let it fill your hair, your sleeves, your bones. You haven't felt this clean in weeks, or this grateful. Rain resets everything. The barrels come out next. Big, heavy wooden casks with cracked lids and salted rings. You and the others carry them into place and pray that the rain lasts long enough to fill them. Some crewmen cut up canvas into crude funnels. Others lash buckets to the rigging. One guy just lies on his back and lets the rain pool in his mouth. You join him. It's like tasting silk, but the moment doesn't last. It never does. The rain stops just as suddenly as it began, leaving only slick planks and steaming air. You stare at the clouds, silently begging them to come back. They don't. A few buckets get maybe half filled. The barrels barely catch enough to moisten the bottom. But it's something. Later, you sip from a shared tin cup. Rainwater, real and clean. And it tastes like forgiveness. No tang of rusted iron, no stale mold from the bottom of a barrel. Just purity. It's the kind of drink that makes you believe in luck again. And that, more than the food, is what keeps you going. The hope of moments like these. You're back on stew duty after the rain. The cook's mood has improved. He whistles. Well, wheezes while he stirs. You peer into the pot. No figs this time, but he's managed something unusual. Chunky bits. You lean closer. "It's turtle," he mutters, grinning. "Turtle?" You blink. Apparently, one of the deckhands spotted it floating near the ship and, in a heroic act of hunger, dove straight off the side with a knife between his teeth. The beast now simmers in the pot, legs and all, alongside potatoes, peppercorns, and a splash of grog. The stew smells incredible. Earthy, gamey, exotic. You get a scoop. It's chewy, tastes vaguely like chicken that once dreamed of being a fish. You love it. Turtle meat, you learn, was a coveted delicacy for many pirates. It kept well once salted, and if you were near island waters, they were plentiful and slow. Some ships even caught sea turtles and kept them alive in the hold, turning them into a sort of floating meat pantry. You're not sure how you feel about that. Keeping a creature alive just to delay its death. But today, you're too hungry to be philosophical. There's something primal about sharing a rare meat with the crew. It doesn't matter that the soup's thin or that the turtle's a bit rubbery. What matters is the novelty. It's not biscuit. It's not pork. It's different. Historians still argue whether pirates had consistent access to fresh meat. Some logs suggest they went months without it. Others mention regular hunting expeditions on uninhabited islands, wild pigs, goats, even monkeys. One infamous pirate, Bartholomew Sharp, reportedly roasted a whole armadillo once, claimed it tasted like greasy lamb. You'll take his word for it. Some pirates kept goats or chickens aboard, though they didn't last long. The motion of the ship drove them mad. The chickens stopped laying eggs. The goats developed a 1,000-yard stare you'll never forget. Eventually, someone got hungry, and that was the end of that. You remember the time your ship traded with a local islander for a smoked parrot. You weren't sure what to expect, but it wasn't half bad. A bit stringy. Still had feathers in odd places, but it was food. Colorful, scandalous food. That alone made it unforgettable. Tonight's turtle stew puts the crew in a good mood. Someone breaks out a fiddle. A group near the bow starts dancing, clumsily, drunkenly. One man invents a song about the turtle, calling it Captain Soup. You laugh harder than you have in days. That's another secret about food at sea. It isn't just nourishment. It's entertainment. A change in the menu becomes a story, a song, a shared joke. It's how you mark time. That was before the parrot stew, someone might say. Or right after the coconut cider disaster. Food becomes a calendar. You remember the coconut cider disaster vividly. It happened a month ago when someone tried fermenting leftover coconut water with biscuit crumbs and a whisper of lime peel. It fizzed ominously. Then it exploded. The cook spent 2 hours scraping foam off the ceiling. The cider was never served, but the legend lived on. You spend a while that night sitting near the galley, bowl in hand, letting the last of the turtle broth warm your fingers. You listen to the laughter and the occasional crack of thunder way off in the distance. Someone starts telling the tale of a shipwrecked crew who survived an entire month on boiled sea urchins and jellyfish. He swears the jellyfish made them hallucinate. Everyone laughs. Probably not true. But then again, nothing sounds too strange at sea. There's comfort in that, in the absurdity, in the unexpected. Because when every day is ruled by salt and sameness, the smallest variation, a drizzle of rain, a bite of turtle, a fig in your porridge, becomes everything. You start to live for those oddities. They keep you sane. You roll back into your hammock later, full in that particular pirate way. Not stuffed, just less hollow. You close your eyes and taste the broth again. Let the rain memory settle in your lungs. The ship creaks. The sail flaps gently. Someone starts snoring 3 hammocks down. You smile. Tomorrow will probably be biscuit again. But today was turtle. The smell hits you before the bell rings for morning rations. It's sharp, unmistakable. Tangy in a way that stings your nose and wakes your stomach before your eyes have even opened. You sit up slowly in your hammock, ears already tuning in to the collective groan from the bunks around you. One man curses under his breath. Another mutters a soft prayer. The smell? It's vinegar. And that only means one thing aboard this ship: pickled everything. You stagger toward the galley half out of habit, half out of dread. The cook doesn't even look up. He's hunched over his barrel, ladling wet, sour heaps of pickled cabbage and turnip onto splintered wooden bowls like he's dishing out treasure. The liquid drips off the edges, pale and murky. A few purple streaks suggest there may have been beets involved, or blood. Unclear. You accept your bowl with the resigned gratitude of someone who has truly run out of standards. Pickled vegetables were a staple aboard long voyages, not because anyone loved them, but because they lasted. Long after the fresh stuff had rotted or been eaten, you could still open a jar of pickled radish and find something vaguely crunchy floating inside. Sour, yes. Mysterious in origin? Often, but not rotten. That counted for a lot. You take your first bite. It crunches, that's something. The brine is so strong it makes your eyes water. You power through it like a pirate should. You've eaten worse. Remember that time you chewed mold off cheese and called it blue flavoring? Yeah, this is practically gourmet. The crew eats quietly this morning. Maybe they're still riding the emotional high from yesterday's turtle stew. Or maybe their mouths are too puckered to speak. You spot Briggs trying to wash his pickle bits down with grog. He chokes, glares at his bowl, and goes back for a second bite anyway. You're 9 weeks out from the last proper port. That means you're deep into survival menu territory. The salted meat is dwindling. The biscuit barrels are rattling with more dust than bread. And the pickles, they're suddenly the star of the show. Not all pickles are equal, you've learned. There's the sharp, crunchy kind that actually feel like food. Then there's the sludgy, soggy ones that might have started as onions or cucumbers or, well, something. They've gone full amorphous now, just flaps of salty tang. Still edible. Mostly. You once heard a man describe pickled garlic as the candy of the sea. That man was wrong. But he said it with such conviction that people started repeating it. Candy of the sea, they'd shout before biting into a whole clove like it was an apple. Madness. Pickling was a lifesaver on long voyages. The acidic environment of the brine killed off most bacteria, preserving food far longer than you'd think. Even eggs could be pickled, though you've yet to experience one. Rumor has it a crew out of Jamaica once lived 3 weeks on nothing but pickled duck eggs and hope. The ship's doctor went blind in one eye. Historians still argue over how widespread pickling really was on pirate ships. Some claim it was only common on more organized vessels with experienced quartermasters. Others argue it was improvised at sea. Cooks throwing spare cabbage and scraps into leftover rum barrels, hoping for the best. Whatever the truth, pickled anything became a kind of floating currency. You once traded 3 pickled onions for a sharpened spoon. No regrets. Sometimes the cook gets creative. He tosses in cloves or bay leaves, maybe even a splash of citrus peel if there's some lying around. Those batches taste almost good. Most days, though, it's just salt and vinegar and sorrow. And yet, there's comfort in it. There's a ritual to it. The scrape of the ladle, the squelch of vegetables, the acidic sting that curls your nostrils. You start to recognize the jars by smell. Oh, it's Purple Cabbage Day, someone might say, and everyone nods solemnly. A few favorites emerge. Pickled carrots get the most cheers, pickled leeks the least. No one talks about the turnips. We just eat them and move on. You remember a particularly bad jar from last month. Something had gone wrong. It bubbled when opened. That's never good. Still, food was food. A few brave souls tried it. The results were dramatic. One man claimed he saw God. The cook swore off pickling for a week. Then he got bored and started again. Today's batch is fine. Sharp, salty, with enough crunch to keep your teeth busy. You imagine you're eating fresh salad. It helps. Barely. Lunch isn't much better. The cook repurposes the leftover pickle brine into soup. Yes, pickle soup. Add a handful of hardtack crumbs. Stir until vaguely thick, and voila, broth of the damned. You drink it, of course. You always drink it. Hunger makes philosophers of us all. By dinner, someone suggests slicing the pickled vegetables and frying them in leftover pork fat. It's a terrible idea. The cabin fills with smoke. The vegetables melt into translucent slime. Everyone eats them anyway. The captain doesn't touch his dinner tonight. Just sits at the back of the deck chewing a cigar and watching the horizon. Maybe he's dreaming of proper meals. Roasted boar, warm bread, citrus. You're dreaming of citrus too. You once had a lemon on this ship, a real, actual lemon. It was greenish, small and wrinkled, but it was yours. You licked the rind for 3 days before finally eating it whole. The crew thought you'd lost your mind. Maybe you had. Citrus is more than flavor. It's medicine. Scurvy, the eternal enemy of seafarers, is always lurking just offshore. It starts slow, bleeding gums, aching joints, strange bruises. You've seen it strip men down to ghosts in weeks. A few slices of orange could reverse it. A single lime could save a life. That's why pickled vegetables matter more than they taste. The acidic brine preserves some of the vitamins, if only a little. It might not cure scurvy, but it might delay it. And at sea, delay is often the only kind of salvation you get. You finish your pickled dinner in silence. It's not satisfying exactly, but it fills the space where hunger lives. And the sourness, that's the flavor of endurance. As night falls, the air feels heavier. A storm's brewing. You lie in your hammock, stomach vaguely twisting, mouth still tingling from vinegar. Somewhere on this vast ocean, there's a port with fresh bread and stew and candied yams. But for now, you've got pickled cabbage. And strangely, that's enough. You wake to a sound you haven't heard in weeks. A deep, hollow thunk, followed by a chorus of boots pounding the deck and someone shouting something that sets the whole ship humming. They've cracked open the rum. You don't even hesitate. You roll from your hammock like it owes you money and sprint barefoot past barrels and ropes, dodging 2 men who are already halfway to tipsy. There, in the heart of the chaos, stands the quartermaster, grinning like he just found Atlantis, elbow deep in a barrel filled with sealed, dusty bottles. Real rum. Not watered grog. Not that sad swill with more rainwater than alcohol. This is the real stuff. Amber gold, rich with molasses, strong enough to erase a bad week or a bad decade. The smell alone could knock out a mule. You're handed a dented tin cup, still warm from the sun-baked wood of the barrel, and take a cautious sip. It's fire, and glory, and maybe a little regret. But you grin anyway, because today, my friend, is a rum day. Rum, for pirates, wasn't just a drink. It was a reason to keep going. On some ships it was issued daily. On others it was used to reward, punish, bribe, or soften the sting of terrible food. Historians still debate whether pirates truly consumed more rum than navy crews or merchantmen. But ask anyone who's ever served a week without soap and they'll tell you rum mattered. It was morale in a bottle, courage in a cup. A friend you could count on, even if it made you fall off the rigging later. Today's haul is legendary. Someone claims it was hidden behind a false bulkhead, stashed away during a raid 6 months back and forgotten. Others say it's from a prize ship that ran aground and left behind its liquid loot. You don't care. All that matters is that it's here, and it's plentiful. The captain declares an impromptu holiday. The sails are trimmed, the helm lashed, and the weapons secured. For once, no one's scrubbing or sanding or patching ropes. The crew fans out across the deck with their cups, their stories, and their songs. A man with 1 tooth and a terrifying tattoo starts playing a fiddle he hasn't touched in weeks. 2 others bang spoons on a barrel and call it percussion. You sit in the sun, cup in hand, watching grown men pretend to be seabirds, clapping their arms and squawking in delight. A man you've never seen smile before is doing a clumsy jig on a pickle barrel. The cook, predictably, is already 4 sheets to the wind. He claims he's inventing a new recipe, rum stew. Someone tells him that's just stew with bad judgment, but he waves them off and drops a ladle into the pot anyway. Later, you find out he actually made something. Well, something. He's mashed leftover hardtack into grog and soaked it in rum, stirred in whatever sugar he could scrape from the bottom of the supply sacks, then added slices of salted pork for texture. It tastes like betrayal and regret. Everyone has seconds, because that's what rum does. It turns the inedible into a delicacy. It softens the edges of a bitter life. It makes even a stew of shoe leather and vinegar taste like a banquet. Maybe that's an illusion, but at sea, illusions can be survival. One pirate, cheeks flushed and eyes wild, begins reciting a love letter to the rum itself. It is heartfelt. It is terrible. It rhymes rum with thumb, and then somehow drum. Everyone claps like he's Shakespeare. Someone else swears this rum is cursed because it's making them see double. You quietly point out they're on their fourth cup. He nods solemnly and pours a fifth. As the sun dips low, you think about how central rum has become to your life out here. It's not just about the alcohol, though that helps. It's about ritual, structure, something to look forward to. On this endless, floating world where time blurs and the days crawl by, rum gives the clock hands meaning. Historians still argue about the logistics of pirate drinking. Some say they were far more disciplined than the legends suggest, rationing alcohol carefully, even banning it on certain ships. Others insist pirates drank constantly, kept barrels in every hold, and traded for spirits before food. Maybe both are true. You've certainly seen both. There was that ship from Port Royal, the Madame Vane, whose crew drank so much they forgot to raise their anchor before setting sail. You saw them drifting in circles, yelling at seagulls and challenging seaweed to duels. And then there was the old Spanish sloop you once boarded. Immaculate barrels, ration logs carved into the wall. No drinking allowed except on feast days. You nearly cried. Your ship falls somewhere in between. Enough rum to stay happy. Not so much you forget how to steer, unless it's a celebration day, like today. By evening, the cook unveils his pièce de résistance, something he calls rum biscuit pudding. Don't let the name fool you. It's just mashed ship biscuit soaked in rum, with raisins plucked from a jar no one knew we had, baked in the iron pot until it's vaguely solid. But the smell, oh, the smell. It's warm, spicy, smoky. You take a bite, and for one fleeting moment, you're not on a ship. You're in a kitchen, a real one. There's a fire crackling in the hearth. Someone's humming a lullaby. The pudding is warm on your tongue. It tastes like something you once had as a child. You can't name it, but you know it. That's the real magic of rum. It doesn't just numb, it awakens. Memory, imagination, nostalgia. Even when it tastes like moldy bread soup, it can make you feel alive. The captain wanders among the crew with a bottle in hand, pouring generous helpings. He even laughs. You've never seen his teeth before. You wish you hadn't. Someone tries to teach the parrot to say, "Cheers." It learns "curse you" instead. Close enough. You sit with your crewmates under the stars, passing around the last dregs of the rum, the pudding pot scraped clean, the music softening to sleepy hums. Someone's snoring already. A hammock creaks. The waves lap gently. You think about all the wild meals you've had at sea. Stews of unidentifiable meat, pickled things that probably shouldn't be pickled, hardtack that cracked a man's tooth clean in half. But this was different. Today, food and drink weren't just survival, they were celebration, they were community. They were proof that, even on the edge of the map, joy is possible. You tip your empty cup to the stars and whisper, "Thanks." Not to anyone, just to the sea. And then, for the first time in weeks, you fall asleep before your stomach growls. It starts with a sound like a cannon misfiring underwater. Then, silence. A strange, heavy silence that settles on the ship like fog, followed by the unmistakable, stomach-dropping tilt of the deck. 1 second, you're in your hammock, drifting between dreams of pudding and parrots. The next, you're halfway to the floor, clinging to a post with all the grace of a sack of potatoes tossed down a ladder. You blink awake to a chorus of men cursing, the thud, thud, thud of boots above, and the groaning moan of timbers under stress. The ship lurches again, hard. A mug clatters. A lantern swings wildly, casting shadows like monsters on the bulkheads. You grab your boots, tug them on, and make for the hatch before the whole world decides to capsize. You breach the deck and the wind punches you in the gut. Rain slaps your face sideways. The sky's a seething ink blot, boiling with clouds. Lightning rips across it like it's trying to escape. The sails are flapping out of control, giant, angry flags. The rigging whistles like it's being tortured. And somewhere, somehow, the boatswain is still shouting orders like anyone can hear him over the wind. This storm didn't build slowly. It arrived like an ambush. You find your post. You help haul in sailcloth slick with rain. You stagger to the gunwales to retie a rope that's trying to strangle itself. You almost fall overboard twice, maybe 3 times, but by now you've learned how to cling like a barnacle. That skill wasn't on the recruitment poster, but it probably should have been. You're soaked, you're shivering, and, inexplicably, you're hungry. Which, yes, sounds absurd. Except you've been hungry since the 3rd day of this voyage, and your stomach doesn't really care if Poseidon himself is breakdancing in the sea beside you. It just wants food. By dawn, the worst of it has passed. The sea is still growling, but the wind has mellowed to a hiss, and the rain has downgraded from bucket dump to polite spitting. You collapse near the mainmast, exhausted, your hands shaking from effort and cold. Around you, sailors lie in soggy heaps. Someone's sobbing, someone else is laughing. The ship survived, but only just. Below decks, it's chaos. Barrels are overturned, sacks are split. A line of dead fish snakes across the galley floor. The stew pot is nowhere to be found, possibly launched into low orbit. And the cook, God bless him, is muttering to himself like a man on the edge. He's holding a bent ladle and staring at the mess like it personally insulted his mother. You step cautiously around a broken bowl. Got anything edible? He doesn't answer, just jerks his head toward a barrel. Inside, raw oats, no milk, no fire, no flavor, just oats. You stare, then you sigh, then you scoop a handful and start chewing. It's like eating gravel that once attended a grain convention. And yet, you chew. Because pirates don't complain about food after a storm. Not out loud, anyway. Eventually, the cook snaps out of it. He rights his workbench, wipes off a pan with the corner of his shirt, and starts muttering about making something called storm stew. You raise an eyebrow. He glares at you like he invented stew, storms, and words. He starts throwing things in the pot. Dried beans, carrot ends, a suspiciously green onion, a chunk of bacon that smells like desperation. You hear something splash and realize he's added a dollop of lard and what might be a bruised apple. Then, to top it off, a squirt of molasses. Why? No one knows, not even him. He sets the pot on what's left of the stove and lights the flame. It hisses and sputters like it's afraid of success. The smell that rises is complicated, earthy, smoky, vaguely fruity, possibly cursed. "Dinner in 20, he grunts. You mark the time. Meanwhile, the crew is busy taking stock of what the sea stole. A whole barrel of dried fish, gone, flour sacks, soaked, a crate of pickled eggs, smashed. Oddly, the onions survived. Nothing kills onions. The quartermaster begins listing salvaged goods in his little wax ledger. He reads the new list aloud like a funeral dirge. Half-sack lentils, 1 bottle vinegar, 4 cabbages, a jar of capers we didn't know we had, 7 stale biscuit, a chunk of dried squid that tried to escape, and 1 pickle. Just 1. It's a low day, but pirates don't wallow. They rebuild. Ropes are retied, sails mended, bruises compared. A barrel is wedged against the deck and rebranded as a table. You nap in the sun, boots off, salt crusting in your hair, while the storm stew bubbles softly in the galley below. Finally, it's time. The cook ladles the brown sludge into dented bowls. You accept yours like it's treasure. You peer inside. It's thick, lumpy, mysteriously reddish. It gurgles at you. You eat anyway, and, miracle of miracles, it's not bad. The molasses gives it sweetness. The bacon provides salt. The beans are tender. The onion has backbone. And somewhere in there, you taste a hint of smoke that suggests the pot wasn't fully cleaned since the last turtle curry attempt. You devour it. Twice. It fills your belly like a wool blanket for your insides. Warm, steady, solid. You ask the cook what he'll call it. He shrugs. Might be stew, might be penance. Storm stew, someone suggests, and the name sticks. Historians still argue about what pirates actually ate after storms. Many believe they scavenged whatever was left, eating weevils, scraping biscuit crumbs, even drinking soup made from sailcloth boiled with fish oil. Others argue they simply starved until the next port or plunder. The truth? Probably both. But what you've learned is that pirate meals are more than survival. They're memory makers. You'll talk about this stew for weeks. The day the ship nearly died, and the stew that tasted like soot and salvation. Later that night, someone proposes writing a pirate cookbook. Again. Chapter 1. How to boil your boots without judgment. Chapter 2. 50 ways to love your lard. Chapter 3. Rum is a spice. Fight me. You snort your drink. The mood is light again. Someone strums a banjo. Someone else finds the missing pickle and ceremoniously eats it while the crew chants. The sea is still now, but your stomach is full. Your hammock, when you find it, feels like heaven. And your dreams, oh, they're weird. You dream of giant cabbages, of a ship made of bread, of turtles who speak in rhyme. The kind of dreams only storm stew can give you. The morning after the storm arrives with a strange stillness. You wake to the sound of nothing. No screaming wind, no groaning hull, no panicked footsteps overhead. Just the gentle creak of wood, the rhythmic lap of water against the hull, and the muted grumbles of men slowly remembering they're alive. You sit up in your hammock and stretch, every joint protesting. Your back is stiff, your hands blistered, and your hair feels like it was styled by lightning. But your stomach? Your stomach is already whining like a spoiled dog. Storm stew only gets you so far. You make your way to the galley where the cook is already awake, hunched over a battered pot with the look of a man who's just discovered his life's work is feeding ungrateful pirates. He gestures vaguely at a tray. "Breakfast?" he grunts. You approach warily. What awaits you is something he calls sea toast, which is a bold name given that it's not toast at all. It's a stale biscuit that might have once been bread in a former life, rubbed with a scrap of dried fish and, this is the exciting part, drizzled with vinegar. You take a bite. It's crunchy. Not in a good way, like biting into coral. The vinegar stings your nose and sets your jaw clenching, but somehow, weirdly, it works. The sharpness wakes you up better than any sunrise ever could. You chase it with a swallow of rainwater, scooped into a cracked mug, and call it a meal. Around you, the rest of the crew trickles in. Silent, sore, salt-crusted. A few mutter good mornings. Others go straight for the food. You all eat quietly, not because of manners, but because chewing this stuff requires full concentration. Once bellies are full, well, full enough, the crew gets to work. The storm did damage, but nothing fatal. A torn sail here, a snapped rope there. The mast held by some miracle. You spend the better part of the morning retying knots and helping resecure a barrel of dried beans that somehow managed to roll halfway into the officers' quarters. As the sun climbs, you finally get a break. You flop down on a coil of rope and close your eyes for a moment. But your brain, as always, goes straight to food. What's for lunch? The cook answers that question with a single word. Porridge. There's no joy in that announcement, just grim acceptance. You've had pirate porridge before. Thick, beige, and made of despair. This time, he says, he's adding flair. That flair turns out to be a handful of crushed biscuit crumbs and something that might once have been dried apple. You can't tell. The whole mess simmers in a dented pot that's seen more battles than half the crew. It bubbles ominously, smelling faintly of mildew and ash. You spoon it up slowly, the way one approaches a suspicious animal. The texture is glue-like. The flavor? Neutral with a hint of why. Still, you eat. Everyone does. Because it fills the void. Because it's warm. Because at sea, even bland has its comforts. Historians often debate the role of porridge aboard pirate ships. Some suggest it was a daily staple. Cheap, easy, and endlessly adjustable. Others argue it was a fallback, a desperation meal when supplies ran low. You're starting to think it was both, the canvas onto which cooks could paint either mediocrity or mild genius, depending on mood and ingredients. This batch lands squarely in the middle. After lunch, you find yourself assigned to a task that truly tests your patience. Cleaning out the salt meat barrel. It started to smell. Not a little, a lot. Like something died in there, then wrote a poem about it, then died again. You pry open the lid and recoil. What stares back at you isn't meat. It's regret in cube form. The fat is yellowed. The brine has turned murky. You're not sure whether to salvage it or throw a funeral. The quartermaster shrugs and tells you to fish out the least green pieces. That becomes dinner. The cook does his best. He dices the meat, rinses it in seawater, then boils it with lentils and onion shavings. A few cloves of garlic make a surprise appearance. No one knows where they came from, and no one asks. The resulting dish is a kind of salt meat stew, hearty enough to coat your ribs in a protective layer of grease. It's too salty, of course. Everything at sea is. But it sticks with you, and for that, you're grateful. After dinner, the crew loosens up. Bellies full, backs sore but not broken, voices slowly return. Someone tells a joke about a parrot with dysentery. Someone else breaks into song, off-key but enthusiastic. You lie back on the deck and look up at the stars. And again, you think about food. Not today's food, Not this endless cycle of salt and sludge, but real food, land food. You remember that pastry from a portside vendor, flaky and sweet, filled with custard that made your eyes roll back in your head. You remember roasted plantains, sticky and charred. You remember pickled eggs that tingled your tongue and bread so soft it practically sang. Now it's all memory, dream stuff. That night, curled in your hammock, you have a visitor, your imagination. It brings a banquet. You feast in your sleep. Roast duck, steaming rice, syrup-drizzled dates. You reach for a goblet of cold cider and wake up clutching your canteen of stale water. Sigh. The next morning, the cook offers a porridge again, but this time it comes with a surprise. A single raisin found at the bottom of a cracked jar. He announces it like a king presenting a jewel. You see it, so does everyone else. You fight a man for it, and win. You chew it slowly, reverently, savoring the burst of sweetness like it's a gift from the heavens. One raisin. One brief moment of joy. That's life at sea. The raisin incident becomes legend before the sun is even fully up. No one's mad, not really. You earned it. Clean win, no foul play, just a swift elbow to the ribs and a quicker spoon. The man you bested shrugs it off with a half grin and the promise of vengeance at the next culinary duel. You both know the prize won't be worth it. But out here, even small victories taste like glory. The cook, encouraged by the excitement over dried fruit, starts digging through the stores with a new kind of hope. He unearths a jar of sour cherries preserved in rum, probably plunder from a Spanish ship long forgotten in the chaos of travel. There's only half a jar left, the fruit sunken like bloated hearts swimming in brown syrup. He announces a special dessert. No one believes him at first. But sure enough, after dinner, another salt meat stew, this time with a suspicious addition of seaweed for texture. He ladles out a spoonful of the cherries into each man's bowl. They glisten like jewels in the flickering lantern light. You bite into yours. It's tart, sweet, shockingly alive. The rum burns a little on the way down, but you don't care. For just a moment, it's not ship food. It's real food. A flavor from a world where people wear dry socks and have chairs that don't sway. Everyone eats in silence. Afterward, one man stands and proposes a toast with his tin mug of watered-down ale. To the cherry and the cook, and to not dying of scurvy. You all cheer, but the scurvy joke hits a little too close to home. That night, the quartermaster calls a quiet meeting. Supplies are running low, again. The last storm didn't just toss barrels, it soaked what remained. Biscuits crumbled into salt water. Grain grew mold. The dried fish has been gnawed by something, possibly rats, possibly one of the crew. No one's pointing fingers. So begins what everyone dreads. Ration week. Breakfast becomes biscuit dust porridge. Scrapings from the bottoms of barrels, soaked overnight in seawater to soften, then boiled until they form a vaguely edible sludge. Sometimes you get a flake of fish. Sometimes it's just a lump of paste the color of dishwater. You eat it anyway. Lunch is worse. The cook calls it wind soup. It's mostly hot water, seasoned with hope and maybe the memory of an onion. You suspect he waved a bay leaf over it from 3 feet away. Still, it's hot. That counts for something. Dinner is better only by comparison. Salt pork and lentils again. But now the pork's turning. You can smell it. You taste it. You wonder whether you're building an immunity or just giving up. You hear one of the younger crewmates mutter, "I'd kill for a carrot." He means it. To pass the time, the cook begins organizing food contests. First up, creative uses for biscuit crumbs. One man tries to fashion a cake using molasses and crushed biscuit. It collapses in on itself like a soggy star. Another tries to mold his into a figurine, what he claims is a sea dragon, but looks more like a sad potato. You sprinkle yours over porridge and call it crunch garnish. It doesn't win, but it gets a few appreciative nods. The next night, you're on kitchen duty. The cook hands you a knife, a bucket of dried peas, and a warning. Don't screw it up. These have to last 3 days. You soak the peas in seawater, boil them with dried herbs, and stir until your arm aches. When it's done, you serve it with a flourish. Pirate pea porridge, slightly less gritty than usual. Someone adds a pinch of stolen nutmeg. It tastes almost fancy. Historians still argue whether pirate ships had actual cooks or whether the job rotated. Some ships had dedicated cooks, usually a man too injured for deck work or too terrifying to argue with. Others just let the least seasick crewmate stir the pot and hope for the best. Records show everything from spoiled salt pork to elaborate stews made from parrots and pineapples. Your cook? He's cranky, foul-mouthed, and once hit a man with a ladle, but he's good. And somehow, despite the dwindling supplies and general gloom, he makes it work. He starts baking. Not bread, there's no flour left, but he finds enough dried corn to grind into sea cakes. Flat, gritty patties cooked on hot stones. They're dry, slightly burnt, and stick to your molars like gilt, but they're warm. That's enough. One night, after a particularly bad batch of stew, the captain calls for an old tradition. The dinner lie. Each man takes turns describing the meal he wishes he were eating. The captain starts, venison roast, dripping with gravy. Potatoes roasted in duck fat. A slice of warm apple pie with a scoop of cream. The boatswain, oysters on the half-shell. Lamb stew, lemon tarts, a bottle of wine so smooth it could sing. Your turn. You close your eyes. Roast chicken spiced with pepper and garlic. Buttered greens. A loaf of warm rye bread with sweet cream butter. And cold melon for dessert. There's a moment of silence. Someone exhales slowly. The cook pretends not to wipe his eyes. That night, you dream of roast chicken. You wake up with your pillow soaked in drool. The next day, the cook unveils something new. Fish surprise. You brace for the worst, but he's managed to trap a few flying fish off the bill. Fresh, real, scaled, and gutted. He grills them on a grate over a coal pit, bastes them with vinegar, and sprinkles crushed sea salt. The smell alone makes men weep. You eat in reverent silence. It tastes like land, like life, like hope. You lick your fingers and pray for more. By now, the days have blurred. Not in a dreamy, pleasant way. No. In the way that only long, repetitive hardship can grind down time. You wake, eat, work, ache, sleep, and wake again. A loop stitched together by porridge, salt, and the occasional vinegar surprise. And yet, this morning feels different. You hear it in the cook's footsteps. He's whistling. That's either a very good sign or a very bad one. You squint into the haze as he emerges from below decks holding something. A wooden crate, damp and barnacle-scratched, but whole. He sets it down like a treasure chest and pries it open with a flourish. Inside, cheese. Not much, and definitely not fresh. But cheese nonetheless. Hard, pungent, probably goat. It's got mold creeping over one edge and it smells like foot and fortune. But when the cook trims it with his belt knife and slices it into slivers, you nearly cry. Each man gets exactly 2 narrow wedges, about the size of a thumbnail. You nibble it like it might vanish. It's salty. It's sharp. It's perfect. The cheese disappears in seconds. No one speaks. Even the rowdiest men chew in reverence. Someone whispers, "We live like kings." You consider proposing to the cheese. The day carries that tiny spark of luck with it. The wind shifts, catching the sails with a sound like a deep sigh. Not a gust, but a nudge. Enough to move you west, maybe toward shipping lanes, maybe toward land. No one dares to say the word port, but you can see it glimmer in their eyes. Hope smells like hard cheese. Inspired, the cook gets ambitious. He starts mixing something up with the last handful of dried cornmeal, a splash of brine, and the final spoon of beef drippings scraped from the bottom of a jar. What he produces, after much muttering and poking, are dumplings. They're rough, lumpy, barely holding together, cooked in a pot of lentil broth. But they're warm, they're chewy, and they don't taste like despair, which, at this point, is practically fine dining. You eat yours with a quiet sort of joy, even if one of them is so dense it could double as a cannonball. The cook says nothing, but you see the pride in his face. As evening falls, the quartermaster gathers the senior crew for yet another inventory. The biscuit barrel is down to dust. The salted pork is, let's say, ambitious. The vinegar bottle cracked during the last storm. The last of the pickled onions are more mush than garnish. But behind the grain sacks, tucked away in a jar wrapped in waxed cloth, they find honey. You gasp. The crew gasps. The cook clutches the jar like a sacred relic. He doesn't hoard it, doesn't hide it, doesn't even curse when someone tries to lick the lid. He makes honey mash. Oats, whatever crushed nuts are left. Almonds, maybe? A sliver of dried fruit, and that glowing amber syrup stirred together into a thick, sticky, heart-lifting blob. He doesn't even cook it, just mashes it smooth and serves it on slices of sea biscuit. You take a bite. It tastes like memory, like warmth, like morning sunshine and stories by the fire. You let it melt slowly on your tongue and swear you'll never complain again. For 5 whole minutes, anyway. Later, during watch, you hear someone weeping softly. Not from sorrow, but from sheer emotion over that spoonful of sweetness. You pretend not to notice. You understand completely. Historians still argue about honey at sea. Some say it was a rare treat, hoarded and traded like coin. Others claim it was common among Mediterranean pirates and used to preserve fruits or flavor hardtack. On your ship, it's a miracle. After dinner, the cook unveils barrel pie. Not an actual pie, of course. That would be madness. But close enough. He lines a dented tin with smashed biscuit paste, fills it with salted fish, lentils, and what might be dried seaweed, then bakes it over a bed of smoldering coals and broken barrel staves. The result is golden, crisped around the edges, and smells like hope got tired of waiting and decided to cook. You eat in silence, broken only by murmured approval and the occasional groan of happiness. Even the ship's rat steals a bite, and no one blames him. That night, the stars come out in force, crisp, sharp, like pinholes in black velvet. You lie back, belly full, and imagine slicing them into tiny tarts, one with blackberry filling, another with cream. The lookout bell rings once. No one reacts at first, then 3 times. Land ho! You bolt upright. It's faint, a dark smudge on the eastern horizon, barely more than a thumbprint against the sky. But it's there. The cry rolls down the ship like a wave. Men flood the deck. There's shouting, laughter. Someone sobs and kisses the mast. You're not sure who. You don't speak. You just stare, your mouth already imagining warm bread, soft cheese, fresh fruit, eggs, boiled potatoes, even just a vegetable. Any vegetable. You can already feel your teeth being cleaned by a crunchy carrot. Plans erupt instantly. One man swears he'll buy an entire roast goose. Another starts listing all the spices he intends to sniff. The captain warns everyone. First priorities water, wood, and beans. No one hears him. That night, before bed, the cook makes farewell stew. It's nothing fancy, just lentils, onions, a dried mushroom or two, and the last dregs of molasses for sweetness. But it tastes better than anything he's served in weeks. Rich, earthy, almost luxurious. He doesn't say a word while serving, just ladles and nods. You eat slowly, watching the lights of land shimmer faintly in the distance. Tomorrow you'll dock. You'll eat something that didn't come from a barrel or a storm-beaten crate. You might even get to chew on a green leaf and not panic. Tonight, though, you stay curled in your hammock, warm and full and dazed with quiet joy. And you dream of oranges. Morning breaks with the scent of fresh water. Not salt, not brine, not damp ropes or rotting pork or sweat-drenched canvas. Number. This smell is different. It's lighter, clearer, like air running over mountain streams, like rainwater gathered in stone basins. You blink awake, your brain trying to remember why your nose is so confused. Then your ears catch the gulls. Gulls. The most annoying, shrieking, impossible-to-ignore birds in all creation. And, at this moment, they sound like a lullaby. You stumble topside, following the sound, half dreaming and fully starving. You peer over the rail. Land. A crescent of it, shaped like a grin and covered in greenery. Pale beaches ring the shoreline, and beyond that, trees. Real trees. Coconut palms and squat, fruit-heavy things you can't even name anymore. There's smoke curling from somewhere behind the tree line, slow and lazy, the kind of smoke that promises firewood and food and stories. Anchor's down in an hour, the captain calls. His voice is too chipper. Men around you break into quiet cheers. Someone crosses himself. You think one guy might be crying. And just when you think the morning can't get better, the cook appears. He walks up from the galley with his arms full and a sly grin on his face. "One last breakfast," he says, "before you forget all about me." Everyone laughs, but your stomach growls, because he's holding a tightly wrapped cloth bundle, which he opens to reveal. Dried mango slices. Each one is golden, like slivers of captured sunlight. No one asks where he's been hiding them. No one dares. He softens them in warm water, then lays them on slices of ship's biscuit that have been lightly toasted over a flame. It's elegant, decadent even. You bite into your mango slice. It is everything. Tangy, sweet, juicy even in its leathery dryness. You chew slowly, reverently, your eyes fluttering shut. You make a noise that would be inappropriate anywhere except here, now, at the end of all things. "Don't propose to it," someone says with a smirk. "No promises," you reply. And the cook isn't done. He's taken the last few spoonfuls of mashed beans, a knuckle of cured bacon, and a sprinkling of dried herbs, and made what he calls breakfast hash. It's rough, greasy. The beans are half burned on the edges, but it's glorious. You scoop it up with crusty biscuit and lick your fingers afterward. The ship, now slowing as it coasts toward the harbor, is the calmest it's been in weeks. No shouting, no storm prep, just quiet chewing and dazed smiles. The crew readies the longboats. You clutch your pack, nearly empty, just rags and crumbs, and climb down the ladder. The boat thumps into the surf and rows forward, cutting the water cleanly. You smell grilled meat, real meat, charred fat, spiced rub. The wind carries it from the shore and practically slaps you in the face. Your stomach, full 5 minutes ago, howls again like a cartoon wolf. Your mouth waters so hard you almost lean over the side. The boat hits sand. You're up and out in seconds. Feet hit shore. Knees wobble. You nearly fall over, not from exhaustion, but because solid ground no longer feels natural. The beach is hot beneath your soles. The palm trees rustle overhead like applause. You inhale. You are alive. Vendors line the beach's edge. One sells yams roasted over open coals, split and stuffed with spices. Another has skewers of peppered chicken and sticky rice balls on woven leaves. You buy everything in arm's reach. You don't even check the coin. Someone hands you a cup of fresh juice, maybe passion fruit, maybe orange. You chug it. It's cold enough to hurt, and you love every second. You don't even realize you're crying until someone offers you a napkin. You eat and eat and eat. You find a spot in the shade, legs stretched out, plate on your lap, and just breathe. You watch other crewmates gorge themselves, one man biting into a green apple like it's the crown jewels. Another cradles a fresh loaf of bread like a baby. You spot the quartermaster chewing cassava. "We'll need dried beans," he says between bites. "Fruit, salt, wine if they'll sell it." You nod, dazed. "Not pork." "God, no." Back at the ship, the cook haggles fiercely with locals. You watch him trade, barrels for crates, rum for spices, hats for pineapples. He inspects every item with the wary eye of a man who has fed people through madness and misery. You think back on it all. The porridge, the weevil biscuits, the sweet vinegar and hot stew. The day the honey came out, the raisin incident, the dumplings, the mango slice. The way food didn't just keep you alive, it reminded you that you were alive. Historians write about pirate diets as dry facts. X ounces of salted pork per day, bread stored in linen bags, barrels of beer in tropical climates. But they never quite capture the humanity. The way salt tastes different after 10 days. The way a mouthful of beans can undo a fight. The way someone grinning over a sliver of cheese becomes your brother. The way you can love a meal that hated you back. Night falls. Software gentle. Warm. You sit by a fire, skewer of fish in one hand, a mug of something fruity and probably fermented in the other. You lean back into the sand. The cook sits beside you. "You did all right," you say. He raises his eyebrows. "You didn't die." You nod. "Best compliment I've had all week." He tosses a stick into the flames. "Next voyage, I'm taking a goat." You grin. "Only if I can name it." The stars wink above you now, not hard and distant like before, but soft and low, reflecting in the surf. The air smells like salt and cinnamon and roasting yams. Your belly is full. Your heart is full. You sleep. On land. And now you're warm. Your muscles are loose. Your shoulders have dropped. The fire beside you crackles gently, and the hush of waves blends with the soft breathing of your crewmates scattered across the beach. The long voyage has ended. The hunger has quieted. You're not cold anymore. Not cramped. Not chewing around mold or shaking salt from your biscuit. You're here. Take a slow breath. Feel the sand beneath you. Feel the weight of a real meal in your belly. Let the memories settle. The porridge, the stew, the dumplings, the mango. Let them pass like fog off the sea. Your ship rests quietly in the bay. Your hammock sways no more. The wind is soft now, brushing against the palm leaves above like a lullaby. You remember the way a spoonful of honey lit up your mouth, the sound of men weeping over dumplings, the toast to surviving another day. You remember the laughs, the silence, the smell of something almost delicious. And now, it's behind you. There are no more storms tonight, no biscuit counts, no strange stews or vinegar wine, only peace, only firelight and stars and the slow, calm beating of your heart. So close your eyes now. Sink deeper into stillness. Let the waves hush your thoughts. You've made it, sailor. You're fed. You're safe. You're home. And you're done. Sweet dreams.